Well, instead of a noonday lunch live stream today, you get a 5 o'clock dinner lunch or a dinner live stream. We are maybe about 5 hours later than we normally are, but let me tell you, we got a lot to catch you up on since the last time we chatted, which was about midnight or so last night. So much content, including a classy exchange between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen after the game that the NFL world is applauding. And that good vibes, astonishingly, somehow is carried into the national media as they're talking about the Ravens' loss. And I want to say most, not everyone, but I feel like most is giving fair analysis of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Plus, there was the locker room clean out earlier today and much, much more. But before we get to all that, part of the reason that we're starting at 5 o'clock, you can see that Bobby there is on a bus back from Buffalo, but you guys kind of got off to a rough start there, didn't you, Bobby?
Yeah, for sure. Big ups to you for making sure this show went on today because we've had some travel logistics going south on us. We've tried to get south, and we finally are. We're still in Western New York, coming up on the Corning area. They're familiar with it, and we're about to cross the Pennsylvania border. So we're not going to be home till 9 o'clock. Been a little bit of a rough day, but here we are. It's time to chat through a number of different things. I'm sure there'll be some connectivity issues here and there, being that we're in the boondocks, but ready to officially set the table for this offseason with you.
Yeah. Well, you kind of froze a little bit there, but just I don't know if you told the story or not, but you guys, the transmission went out on a bridge, and you've been stuck there for several hours, and so I don't know if you told that, but you froze up. So you are a trooper for still going on throughout the day, and so obviously, as those who were with us over the weekend, they know I was coming back from Atlanta. So between the two of us, we were coming from different. You were coming from way north in America. I was coming from way south, trying to meet here in the middle again. But the show does go on, even if it's at 5 o'clock. So just glad that you could make it. This is crazy that you're just driving in a bus, and we're going to give our analysis.
We got to give some shout out to our friend Holly. Holly's a big subscriber of ours, Holly Keefe, and her brother's in IT, and he recommended a certain hotspot that I've been using over the last few days that I bought especially literally for this trip to Buffalo. And it's held up pretty well. I hope that's the case over the next hour or so.
All right. Well, let's get into the exchange between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen after that game. Some of us were probably still like hanging our heads and maybe throwing stuff at the TV. So perhaps this was missed. But after the game, the way Josh Allen ran over to Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson also ran over to Josh. And then Lamar, after the game, shared what the two said. But let me just kind of set the scene a little bit here with, let me see if I got the audio here. See, I thought I already pulled it in, but we may be out of sorts. Here it is. Just the audio with some screen grabs to kind of set the scene of what people were hearing after the game.
It's going to be for the fourth postseason meeting since 2020. It's going to be the Chiefs and the Bills, and immediately Josh Allen goes straight for Lamar Jackson.
So obviously they go straight for each other, hug each other. Like they didn't even, like Josh Allen didn't even really hug his own teammates first. Like he handed somebody the ball. They're kind of looking at each other, cheering. Josh looks back. He sees Lamar and he darts over to him. Lamar was asked about what was said between the two in his post-game presser.
Oh, yeah, man, just, we competing. We competing, don't get me wrong, but hats off to him, hats off to me. That's what he said to me. Great players, recognize greatness. And we both recognize each other, But I told him, man, go get something, go win something, man, MVP, Super Bowl, do something. I want him to be successful.
So Lamar said, great players recognize greatness, and we both recognize each other. But I told him, man, go get something, go win something, MVP or Super Bowl, do something. I want him to be successful. What was kind of your reaction? Did you even notice it last night that they ran right towards each other? And that's number one. And number two, what did you think of that exchange?
Yeah, I did notice it, right? CBS cameras kind of made it impossible if you were watching. I see some in the chat that were like, I was tuned out by then. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We get that. I'm sure it's been a wave of emotions for many of you diehard fans over the last 12 plus hours. But I just thought it was class personified, both from Josh and Josh's initiative to Lamar making sure that he says, yeah, both gestures were really simple, but I thought they came across as thoughtful.
Mhm.
And with the week that it was leading in, with so many making so much of what Lamar had to say about their friendship, which doesn't exist in the offseason, that doesn't take away from the mutual respect that clearly exists between draft classmates, between MVP frontrunner candidates, between AFC foes, and clearly between two that probably not going to be the last time that these two meet up in a do or die game in January. And guess what? We're going to see it again next year at the very least in the regular season, because Buffalo is on Baltimore's road schedule.
Oh, again. Okay. When we don't know what week yet, we'll find out when the schedule's released, probably in May. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, look at this picture. Look at this picture. Like, this is crazy to me because look at how genuine that smile looks from Lamar as he's looking at Josh, and he's doing that despite Bobby feeling this way. We transcribed this quote yesterday, but here's a snippet of it. Think about how people are able to compartmentalize their feelings. I think this is like, I use this word a lot, self-mastery. When you can go out there and you are just punched in the gut and you have a moment that is just against everything you've been working for. Like, you just came up short on that. You are super frustrated. You're super angry. And yet you gave them, the winner, a smile and a hug like that when he's feeling really inside like this.
In situations like this, turnovers play a factor. Penalties play a factor. Tonight, the turnovers, we can't have that, and that's why we lost the game. Because as you can see, we're moving the ball wonderfully. It's hold on to the ball. I'm sorry for my language, but annoying. I'm tired of
Yep.
Yeah, he was ticked off, and rightfully so. Not happy with all the turnovers and things like that. He also showed a little bit more of his frustration when he talked about being coming so close so many times.
For this, because we right there. I'm tired of being right there. We need to punch in. We need to punch in that ticket. But bro, we gotta get right all season, man.
Man, it just, and it's like you're like obligated to go and talk to the media when you absolutely do not want to. And of course, you're going to get a question of, well, what do you got to do next year to get past this? And there's nothing he can say to make himself happy, his teammates happy, fans happy. He's got to go and do his media obligations. And it's like, what can he say? He knows he knows that the turnovers are the issue, but saying it doesn't help anything. Doesn't help a thing. The only thing that's going to cure this is getting back here next year and then winning it. Like, that's the only thing. And so you can sense his frustration. A lot of people were probably cursing right there with Lamar. But again, those with self-mastery can do both. You can be frustrated and show your, just like happiness for Josh. Before the game, he's like, I'm not trying to be his friend. This is serious, But after the game, once the battle's over, he can give kudos to the guy who beat him head to head. But, it's going to eat at him all offseason, Bobby. All offseason is going to eat at him, Mark Andrews, the whole team. And there's nothing they can do but go forward from this point.
I remember Kyle Van Noy, who reminded us of this during one of his podcast interviews, or maybe one of his podcast episodes within recent weeks. And that was that he hibernated essentially for weeks after last year's AFC Championship game. So there's a grieving process that's attached to this.
Mm-hmm.
Marlon Humphrey, just speaking of hibernation, he just came out of his Twitter hiatus. He's now back on Twitter. He did one of his in-season Twitter hiatuses, and I'm sure that's just about locking in and a certain singular focus that's required throughout a 17-game, 18-week regular season. And here are a few of his opening tweets to kind of kick off the offseason. Last night, tough loss. Also last night, thanking God for the highs and lows. And then earlier today, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, Marlon tweeted, was hoping when I woke up it was just a dream, but nah, the season is over, with a broken heart emoji. And Sarah, that kind of speaks to what we'll finish up with, later on, about some locker room clean out pieces of content from beat reporters and whatnot. And the reality is this is the last time that this roster, the way that it was constructed, 53 men, a practice squad, staffers, we'll see who gets plucked. We'll have some quick hits. That's actually good news for Todd Monken, assuming that most want him back in Baltimore. Chicago has hired a new head coach, so we'll get to that coming up in the quick hits. But this is the last time that the way this team was constructed, which hit a lot of historic milestones, will ever be together as a cohesive unit. And that obviously comes with its an emotional toll.
Bobby, you said there's like an emotional process, talking about KVN not leaving his house for like a week or two. Even the fans are doing the same. Captain Hard here in the super chat. Went to the gun range to blow off some steam. Feels so bad for Mark. Every year we had answers of what needed to change. This year, I don't know. So Captain Hard going to the gun range to blow off steam for himself there. Everybody doing it kind of their own way. But Bobby, those kind of good vibes that Lamar and Josh showed each other, I was pleasantly surprised that most national media, not everybody, I thought gave a pretty fair analysis of the Ravens' loss. We all knew what was coming for these morning shows and these afternoon shows. Do you blame Lamar? Who's the most to blame? It's always these blame games, right? And nobody absolved Lamar. But at the same time, I didn't see anybody say what we've seen him before, that it was a choke job by Lamar. It's all on Lamar. Like he's your MVP. He's this, and then using that against him. I didn't see that. There was some bad analysis. We'll get to it. But for the most part, I thought there was like last night, I said to you, because Lamar put together that 88-yard drive and he rose to the moment, I said, I wonder if people are going to give the context, not to absolve Lamar, but I said, I wonder if people are going to give the context that they gave Josh Allen when he lost to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and he never got a shot in overtime. So they don't hold that loss against him. So I was like, are national media going to do the same for Lamar, since in the toughest moment, are they going to add that context? Not absolve him, but add the context. And to my surprise, that did happen. We'll start with First Take and Stephen A. Smith.
Hey, I'm going to start with you. How much blame does Lamar deserve for the loss?
Minimal. I mean, the turnovers are important. Don't get me wrong. And you're driving in the first half and you end up turning the ball over. You threw an interception. It was a bad throw. Certainly that's on him. But it's really, really hard to say the blunt of the blame is on him.
But ball security is job security.
Yes.
And you cannot overlook the bed that you put yourself in. As the grandma used to say, you make the bed, you got to lay in it. Mm-hmm. And you put yourself so far into a deficit early. The careless ball play, with him trying to make a play, trying too hard to make a play. Just go down. The inaccurate pass, okay, cool. Mark Andrews' fumble. Those led to 10 points for Buffalo. 10 points. You lost the game by 2, Stephen A. You lost the game by 2, Shay.
Yes. When we talk about greatness, which both of y'all know something about, we're talking about moments. On many, many occasions, we see ourselves up here talking about moments. They were down 21-10 at the half.
Right.
They were reeling. And these brothers come back. And then I'm saying, okay, you down 27-19. Not only do I need a touchdown, but I need a 2-point conversion. I got to do this. I'm the 2-time league MVP. I'm probably going to get a third. Everybody and their grandmama watching me, and they waiting for me to fold because that's what's happened in the past. And I drive 88 yards, and I close the deal, and I throw a strike to Likely. You got the touchdown. And then after that, all I need is a 2-point conversion. And likelihood is we going into overtime the way the defense was flowing, right?
Yeah.
And I put it right into the hands of one of the more reliable tight ends in history. I'm not saying those turnovers didn't hurt him. I'm not saying that you can't count those. I understand that. I'm not completely absolving them. But what I'm saying is greatness far more often than not is measured in moments. And when that moment showed up, You, me, everybody. We
Right.
sitting there watching. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's 27-19. You need a damn touchdown and a 2-point conversion. And he did it.
The last,
And that's why I can't take that away from him.
but
Okay, so I wanted to get your reaction to that because when she asked, like, how much blame do you put on Lamar? Stephen A said minimal. Okay, and both Cam and Unk, although I didn't show the Unk part, pushed back a little bit because I also listened to Monk or Shannon Sharp on Nightcap, and he also said you can't put all the blame on Lamar. Sounded like they wanted to do a little bit more than Stephen A's minimal. But what do you agree with the word minimal blame? Number one, and number two, do you agree that, like, I think what Stephen A is getting at, Bobby, is that not all turnovers are equal, right? So he's saying, yes, obviously you don't absolve him, and he put his team in a bad position with 2 bad turnovers, right? They were on Lamar, can't blame anybody else. They were on him. You could maybe say, the weather and the slip and the snap, obviously the snap, but he recovered from the snap. He himself said I should go down. So, but here's my thing. If Mark Andrews catches that 2-point conversion or doesn't fumble, then those interceptions are minimal, right? But because he doesn't catch it, they loom large. And so how much do you put on those interceptions early versus what he did in the second half, which was complete MVP level play?
I think Stephen A summed it up fairly, just like we talked about in our pre-conference call. I think it's fair.
Yeah.
That interception in the first half, that was minimal. Did they cost themselves an opportunity to put up points? Yes. Did they surrender any to Buffalo as a result? No, the defense went out and got a stop.
Defense had
Lamar's
his back on
fumble. What's that?
I was just agreeing. The defense had his back on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
The fumble was significant. But when you put that fumble up against going 88 yards without Zay and without Ricard and throwing a dot to your number one security blanket since the year that you were drafted in a lake effect kind of weather environment with the game on the line, on the road, not to mention, that is a moment.
Yeah.
And that was a moment that unfortunately Mark took away from Lamar's moment. Mark took away from the Ravens moment and came up small, which unfortunately we've seen a time or two from him in the postseason, which I know has a lot of Ravens fans within this fan base questioning him. With that said, Mark, and we'll get back to him in a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
This is a dude who, I agree with John Harbaugh last night. They wouldn't be here without him. And so you hate that it had to happen that way. Like he had to be the fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see that as a moment. And I agree with Stephen A. I think that's a fair way of putting it. How about you?
Yeah, I do. It feels a little bit more than minimal to me. But I think more than anything, what I appreciated from that segment and almost all segments I watched this morning is that there wasn't this onslaught of, well, you're the $55 million, QB, you're the MVP, and this is all your fault, which is what it usually comes down to. It felt better that one person was saying, no, he deserves a little bit more blame than what you're giving him. Like nobody was absolving and nobody was saying it was all on him. And so it was refreshing to me that there was like nuance to it. And there was all that. And then I would also say, I do take a little bit of the blame off of Lamar though, because he pulled himself out of it. And so if Lamar had thrown an interception on that final drive, right? If he had thrown an interception on the final drive, then I think you could use the choke word, right? Where people are saying Lamar choked. You don't choke when you have a bad quarter. Because remember, that opening drive was phenomenal. And Derrick Henry dropped a pass on that opening drive, and they couldn't run much on that opening drive. Like that opening drive where they scored easily, that was Lamar too. It was literally that second quarter, and it was a bad second quarter. But then he came out, and he played MVP in the first quarter, then the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So to see him dig himself out of that does to me say, yeah, there was no choking there. He rose to the occasion when his back was up against the wall, when he was playing badly. And so that to me, in some ways, was like, okay, cool. Lamar, these playoff games aren't too big for Lamar. And I think that's why I heard nuance this morning on these shows. Because when things were going bad, instead of holding his throwing his helmet down or being frustrated or just letting his head hang low or getting antsy or any of that, we watched him go into halftime. He's clapping and he's getting his teammates going. And John Harbaugh said afterwards that Lamar was talking at halftime and he was given the message. And then he came out and he overcame his terrible second quarter. So to me, that does absolve him of some of the blame, although it can't be all of it because they wouldn't have been in that hole in the first place. You know what I mean? And Absolutely. But to me, next time the Ravens are in a playoff game, and if they happen to be down, Lamar can draw on this experience and say, I know I can do this. I did it up in Buffalo at night in front of the world after my worst quarter of the entire season. And I saw myself, I can envision myself staying calm and cool and delivering the strikes without being able to rely on a run game to get this thing done. So, and Bobby, Stephen A. wasn't the only one that felt that way. Dan Orlovsky was one of them, as you pulled in on this slide.
Yeah, and he certainly didn't pull any punches, went a little bit harder than Stephen A. did. And last night wrote, if you put the loss on Lamar, respectfully, you are a loser. Mark Andrews is one of the all-time Ravens. He had a brutal drop and fumble. Yes. If you're going to use that to trash him, respectfully, you are a loser. And, of course, Lamar's quote, as we've already referenced, I'm tired of being right there. We need to punch in that ticket. There were some that were taking words out of context or not including the entire quote as if to say Lamar was singling out Mark's issues and Mark's turnover. That was not the case. He held himself accountable first, talked about it team-wide. So depending on where you get your news and what your algorithm dictates, don't make anything of that. Go back and listen to the press conference.
Well, I'll bring in the quote that he said on Mark, by the way. Like, he was asked about Mark twice. The first time he turned it on himself and threw himself under the bus. And the second time he spoke directly to Mark. So yeah, definitely do that. But who was it that we listened to? Who was it? We were making this joke on the show like maybe a month ago. We were like, whenever somebody says respectfully, whatever follows next is not so respectful. So he's like, respectfully,
who the heck was that?
You're a loser. And it's like, yeah, there's no way you can respectfully call somebody a loser.
Who the heck was that, Sarah?
That was funny. I don't remember who that was. I feel like it was one of the ESPN guys. I could be wrong.
Was it Dominique?
I don't remember. I was going to say it was Spears. I thought it was Spears.
Marcus Spears. We've done so much content the last few weeks.
Crazy.
Who even knows?
It's crazy. Okay. You want to find out who else didn't bury Lamar, which is the most shocking to me, especially after what he said last week, which is that winning this game would mean nothing to Lamar. Like it was like no matter what Lamar did, he couldn't please him. But Emmanuel Acho, he tweeted last night, people will slander Lamar Jackson, bring up Lamar Jackson's playoff history, and bring up his turnovers. Ignore them. Mark Andrews cost them the game. Lamar took his 88 yards down the field in 8 plays and threw a dot to Mark Andrews to tie the game. So I was shocked to see him do that. So I feel like, again, now I don't know that we all need to bury Mark alone, because as I said, we can't absolve Lamar. But oof, Mark, oof. So again, that's a bunch of guys who have been against Lamar or said some pretty tough things against Lamar, who I thought were being fair. Then listen to this. So later in that First Take episode, Bobby, she asked the panel, if they think Lamar can win a Super Bowl. And Stephen A. was like, I don't know. He's like, I have my doubts, not because of Lamar, but because Patrick's not going to fade. And Allen's still going to be there. And at some point, Burrow will rebound, and he talks about, CJ Stroud is rising. And now in the NFC, you got, Jaden Daniels, who knows what he's going to be. And so he's like, he could, but you got to take advantage of these situations. So on First Take, Shannon Sharp gave a very abbreviated version of what he said last night on Nightcap. And Shannon is still a big believer that Lamar can win one and maybe more than one. Here's Shannon Sharp on Nightcap.
Look, you could be great, but if you want to be iconic, the playoffs are where it's at. Kobe, Bird, Magic, Jordan, Braun, iconic, Shaq, Montana, Rice, Mahomes, Brady, iconic. But when you talk about historic and iconic players, Lamar Jackson has an opportunity that when you talk about the NFL, you cannot mention anything about the NFL or quarterbacks without saying L. Jack's name. That's what he has an opportunity to do. But what now you win a Super Bowl when the Bradys and the Montanas and the Mahomes having a discussion. Let me roll my A. What y'all guys talking about? I'm at the table, Ocho.
Oh, yeah.
I'm at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Damn, man.
Yes. He's special. All it takes is one. And I've said this. I believe if he can get one, and I hate using the caveat if, but if he can just get one, I believe the floodgates are open.
Yeah.
I believe the floodgates for Lamar Jackson will open. And boy, I mean, think about it. They were killing Steve Young. Steve Young was winning MVPs just like Lamar.
Yeah.
It wasn't until he won that Super Bowl he got that bear off his back.
Thoughts on Shannon Sharp saying that he thinks Lamar can win one, and when he gets one, the floodgates will open.
That was my first time listening to that one.
Yeah.
Opening up the floodgates. I mean, maybe just from a pressure standpoint and the fact that, to his point there at the end, the monkey's off your back. I mean, we'll never truly know just how antsy Lamar gets. We know that, he referenced wild card weekend being that it was a primetime game against Pittsburgh, that it took forever to get there. And so maybe that was sort of suggesting that he was still getting a little antsy. But I hope that's the case, because his fair share of postseason heartbreak. I know my connectivity is messing around right now. You can
You're
hear
back.
me?
You're back. I gave you a second. I knew it would come in and out. I'm just trying to be patient with it.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, starting to get dark too here as we make our way down the highway. But for those that aren't aware, we had some maintenance issues with our bus, so we are headed back down to Baltimore, and we were supposed to earlier this morning. That's the story for another day. But I think that's encouraging. That's a guy who's won multiple Super Bowls himself. He wasn't a quarterback, but I think it's encouraging. And you hope that that's in the imminent future for Lamar. And I think you and I both believe that if he stays healthy, if he remains healthy, the Ravens will be back. Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of two more clips I kind of want to get reaction to. You know how people always have the conversation like if you and I played one-on-one basketball, and I would win, obviously. But you got me by 2 inches, so we'll see. I'm gonna have to do that when I get out to Columbus this offseason. Oh man, my 15-year-old beat me for the first time a couple months ago, and it was like seriously a half proud, half depressing moment for me. But it would kind of be like, well, did Sarah win the game, or did Bobby just lose the game? Obviously, meaning that you just played poorly rather than me playing better. And so that was kind of the conversation they had on Get Up this morning. And I wonder if you're going to pick up one line in there from Greenberg, but I try to get a couple of pieces from everybody talking about did the Ravens gift this to Buffalo, or does Buffalo deserve, credit for taking it away from the Ravens?
It was a better team. Baltimore was the better team in this game. And, the one thing we talk about at this time of year, you got to be able to make the game-winning plays when it counts.
Anybody make this about Baltimore for me, though? I mean, this is about Buffalo, in my opinion.
I'm not going to lie to you, Dan. I hear what you're saying, and I completely disagree with it. I'm not trying to take anything away from Buffalo. I'm delighted for them, and I give them a great shot to beat Kansas City next week. I have no idea how they won that game yesterday. Watching it, I have no idea how they won that game. The Ravens gave it to them in every way you can give another team a game. Dan, 2 critical turnovers in the first half, multiple big drops. How about the Derrick Henry drop early in the game? How about when they get going in the second half? The only thing that could have stopped them were themselves. The Buffalo defense had no answers in the second half. Look, I thought that Lamar Jackson was the best player on the field yesterday, so I'm not taking anything away from him at all. But if the Ravens don't do uncharacteristically, and this is the second consecutive year that we say this, the Ravens were the best team. They were the best team in the AFC last year, and they were the best team in the AFC this year. And they find ways to lose games they have no business losing. They did it during the regular season, which is why they were in Buffalo yesterday, and they did it again yesterday.
5 playoff losses for Lamar. They've been outscored off the turnovers, 37-3.
Well, there you go.
I
mean, it's
Myles Garrett summed it up perfect when he talked to us, and he was just as straight face as can be. They're their own worst enemy.
It's like, and it's, you want to give, listen, because you want to give respect to the opponent. Okay, the Bills won, and perhaps their game plan, knowing what the Ravens have done in so many playoff games, which is, it just seems like when the Ravens lose a playoff game, they've played their worst game of the season in that playoff game. That includes Lamar. It includes guys like Mark Andrews. And it's just like, how does this keep happening where you just play your worst game? And so maybe it was the Bills' strategy to say, you know what? Just play clean football because we've seen the Ravens press and they'll beat themselves. But nonetheless, Mike Greenberg said on there, Lamar Jackson was the best player on the field. And you have seared in your mind that second quarter, but Bobby, you think back, like name somebody that was better than Lamar. Look at what he did in that first quarter. Look what he did in the third quarter. Look what he did in the fourth quarter. And yet they keep doing this to themselves. And so on one hand, I completely agree with most of the panel except for Dan, because Dan was like, no, this is about Buffalo. And all of the rest of them are like, no, the Ravens gifted that win to them. I agree with that. But it's also a gut punch because it's like, Ravens, stop doing that. Why? Why does this keep happening where you play your worst game at the end of your playoff run? It's in the playoffs. And we talked about this yesterday. I said, Bobby, do you think that was Lamar's worst game? You thought about the Steelers. And I was like, okay, maybe the Steelers, but this was the first game Lamar had multiple turnovers, you know? And again, he helped lead the team to dig themselves out along with the defense standing pat in the second half. But it's like this double-edged sword. It's like, yeah, you did gift it to the Buffalo Bills. You are the better team. And so that even feels like more of a gut punch.
For sure. I still, it's funny. You just brought up that question that we talked about last night. Do we think this was Lamar's worst game of the year? And I kind of reflected on that a little bit this morning. I still think it's Pittsburgh. I do. And a lot of that has to do with his second half performance yesterday.
That's fair.
And that 88-yard drive that we continue to talk about being a moment, right? That was a moment. And obviously a moment that will live in infamy because of the way that the 2-point conversion went. But that to me is something you can hang your hat on. And as you said earlier on, when inevitably they are in a similar position in the coming years, Lamar has calluses and he will be ready at some point. This has been a painful start to his postseason career. Clearly, he goes into his 8th season being below 500, just like Peyton Manning. I know all of you guys probably are sick of those comparisons because they're circulating across the internet. But maybe, just like it happened for Peyton, even though it was in 2 different franchises, to what Shannon was sort of predicting. Once you get one, the floodgates could potentially open up for 8.
Okay, now I said most of the media I thought did a good job analyzing this. And to me, I think if you want to put more blame on Lamar, that's fine with that second quarter, right? Like, to me, I thought if people were going to wake up and really, blame Lamar and put it all on him, I thought they would look at that second quarter. But Chris Sims entered the chat, and he gave what I think was not great analysis. And you got to watch as he's giving his analysis. Look at Kay Adams' face. This is him on Up and Adams show. Kay is like, what are we talking about here? All right, this is hilarious.
Play out there if they can on that rest of that highlight sequence, because
I think they're listening.
when he played right here, this is perfect.
Okay.
Throw it. It's too late.
So for the audio only, we're showing a screen grab of the last pass to Mark Andrews that clearly hit Mark Andrews in both hands right at the midsection at the goal line. Okay. So he's analyzing that play and is getting after Lamar. And let me start this over again.
They play out there if they can on that rest of that highlight sequence, because
I think they're listening.
when he played right here, this is perfect.
Okay.
Throw it. It's too late. Lamar Jackson's making $55 million a year. That ball needs to be on time, and it was not accurate. Mark Andrews needs to catch it. Don't get me wrong. But Lamar Jackson's making $55 million a year. He double clutched it and threw it like a dart. And now there's Mark Andrews where it's cold. He's worried about getting in the end zone, right? And he's
talk me through
Run that back.
He's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Like when he first says it, let me see if I can find her face. She's like, right here. Look at her face.
Look at her. Can we run that back?
Yeah, let me run it right here. Let's run it right here.
He double clutched it and threw it like a dart. And now there's Mark.
Oh. Yeah.
She takes this big breath and she's like, wait, what? So she wants to run it again because she's not seeing. Now, obviously, she's not a former NFL quarterback like Chris Sims, so she's being nice. Let's see it again. And by the way, this double clutch she's talking about, obviously we can't play it. But I looked at it like 3 times. It's not even like a real double clutch. He's like pointing Mark of where to go. I've seen him do that like dozens of times where he's like directing the guy on where to go. It like is less than a split second. Like, this is hilarious to me that like this is where we're splitting hairs, and he's going to bring up the $55 million on that when the man had the ball in both his hands at the goal line
and had just driven it 88 yards.
Yes. Okay, let me keep going. Kay's cracking me up here with her face. Okay, let's keep going.
Me too.
Andrews where it's cold. He's worried about getting in the end zone. Right? And
Sean,
he's
talk me through this one more time. I've not in my head. I'm like, why are we
Yeah.
giving it to Henry? But you're saying, or we're blaming Mark. What are you saying? It's too late.
Well, this play's open. I understand the Henry concept, but this was the perfect play call, so we can't get mad at Todd Monken. And what I'm saying is that Mark Andrews in the meeting today in Baltimore is going to get a negative grade for the drop, but also in Lamar Jackson's meeting with his quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator, he's going to get a negative grade for this throw. He is. It was late. He didn't throw it with the same authority he usually throws it, and then he threw it behind the ball. He made it as hard as it possibly could be for a wide open touchdown. And again, I'm not giving Mark Andrews no free pass here. He should have caught that, but I'm also telling you Lamar certainly could have thrown that better and made that a whole lot easier on Mark Andrews in that big situation there.
The quote was, he made it as hard as it possibly can be. What, Chris?
He must not watch a lot of Lamar and Mark, because the improv they've pulled off for the last 7 seasons together, I mean, makes that look like an elementary type of moment between the two of them. What they've done on the football field.
And he's talking about throwing it with authority. They were like 4 feet away from each other. Like, you don't want to dart it at him. Like, lay it in there.
Look, when Mark ultimately gets up and speaks, and as we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, he declined last night and was not present during locker room cleanout earlier today. When he ultimately does speak, I expect him to face the music and absolutely look dead set in the camera and make it clear that should have been caught. And that's the type of accountability that we've grown accustomed to seeing from Mark Andrews over his career in Baltimore.
All right. Well, before we move on to that, are we getting into the Mark Andrews conversation? Let's check in on some super chats. Do they show up on your screen well? Can you read some?
Yeah, what up, JL Green? Appreciate the super chat, man. Is it mandatory to throw when it comes to 2-point conversions? Because I have to repeat, that is why we pursued and got King Henry. It is not mandatory, but that is what they chose to do on that final play call, which was obviously a really good design by Todd Monken. Sarah and I had a good debate about the first 2-point conversion last night, but I know neither one of us feel like we're in a position to criticize Todd whatsoever on that final play call.
Yes, in that debate, clearly I won, of course, and so
I thought it was actually well balanced based on what I was looking at from the live chat.
Oh, well, I'll bring the live chat around later. We can rehash it if we need to, but no, I know there's a lot of people that wanted to see Derrick Henry in there. I just have a hard time saying that was a bad play call when twice you schemed up wide open tight ends in the end zone. That's tough to put that on the play caller, in my view. All right, Rod.
For the record, I did say last night as we were debating that I was nitpicking, but I did feel like, I thought we had a good conversation with it. It was me nitpicking a little bit.
No, where I think Todd was at his worst was after the Rashad Bateman long touchdown, and they were down at the 2.
When they settled for a field goal.
Yes, just 3 times with Derrick Henry. Now, I understand the first time I think he lost yardage. But I don't know. I just feel like when you have a 1st and 2, right? He did first go to Derrick Henry on that, right? Where he lost yardage. I'm not misremembering that. Is that correct?
Oh, I'd have to go back and look, but you're right. It was 1st and 2. Then I think it ended up being 4th and 8, wasn't it? Didn't it end up getting to like 3rd and 8, 4th and 8, something along those lines? So
yeah, well, I'll look it up during one of these super chats, because my memory tells me that he went to Derrick first. They lost yardage, and then he went to passing. But I'll look it up here in a minute. Actually, do you want to read Rod Wave while I look it up?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Rod Wave with a $10 super chat writes, "Where is Andrews at? Lost the games, and this great leader is hiding. Andrews can't be counted on in the playoffs. Trade him because of the cap hit, and Isaiah Likely is better." As we just mentioned a little while ago, Rod, yes, he did decline to speak with reporters last night and was not present for today's locker room cleanout. I can see why you would be frustrated that he hasn't yet made himself available. It's very uncharacteristic of Mark Andrews, who is a media good guy. It seems like year in and year out. We'll see when he chooses to do so. It might have to be at some point in the offseason, because when the locker room cleanout happens, unless you're appearing on a different podcast, probably not going to see Mark very much in the near future.
Okay,
Did you find it?
Yeah, I found it. So they get to the 2. That was a 42-yard pass. And then they brought in Ben Cleveland, which makes it seem like they brought in an extra offensive lineman. And then Derrick Henry lost 1 yard. There was a run up the middle. He lost a yard. And then Lamar went to pass on the next play and was sacked. So that was -5 yards. And then on 3rd and 8, he tried to pass it to Derrick Henry, and it was incomplete. So he used Derrick Henry twice there. But it was that 2nd down where he tried to pass and Lamar got sacked that really killed him. So when you lose a yard, do you just go right back to Derrick Henry? Are you there? Probably not. So I guess that's
Sarah,
rhetorical.
you got me?
Now I do. Yeah. Did you hear my question to you?
Hit me again.
Okay, so after the Ravens lost a yard, after that Bateman reception for 42 yards, do you go right back to Derrick Henry when he just lost 1 yard with 6 offensive linemen?
Oh man, that's where I'm just like, do it.
Yeah.
Leave Ben in. Just do it. Make them prove it that they can stand you up.
Yeah.
Multiple times in a row.
Yeah.
Impose your will. To use Roquan's words leading into this week, leading into the matchup, impose your will.
Right.
And make them prove it.
The other thing that that one I think is like, I mean, I at least get when you lost a yard that you try something different. That's why it's hard for me to bury Todd on any of this. You know, when you like actually look into the situations and you're like, okay, he did go to Derek and then he lost a yard. I hear you, like you go back again, but at the same time, I'm also like, well, you just got beat, so try something different. But the other thing that I wondered a lot about is I just didn't feel like they had as many read options as especially we saw against Pittsburgh. And I was like, let Lamar read where the defensive ends are. I just didn't feel like that happened as often. And maybe Buffalo was doing something.
Play.
Right. And maybe Buffalo was because they were stacking the box for sure. So maybe he felt like that wasn't an option, but I wanted to see more where Lamar was reading the defensive end or other defensive players. But anyway, on to Gabe. Did you just do Gabe?
Nope, this is you.
Okay. Respectfully to anyone that hasn't watched this all year long, we know who beat us. We were more undisciplined than the team from Gridiron Gang. It's true.
Tongsley, couldn't sleep last night. Love the show and both of you. Feelings mutual, Tongsley. We appreciate your generosity all season long. Neil Harold showing us some love via the Euro currency.
What's TA? Thank you for a very balanced show last night, which provides much needed therapy as opposed to negative bitterness. This morning, 5 hours ahead in the UK's, Herefordshire. Did I get it right? Herefordshire. So in bed straight after game.
Appreciate you, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
Tinsei, when a talented team commits drops, penalties, and shooting themselves again and again and again and again, it falls onto the coach or give it up. #Vault. Captain Hard.
Not going to lie, Sarah, you called it Friday. They seem to fix a problem just for it to come back in the most important game. I swear, Captain Hard, I've seen it so many times. So many times where it was like the story of the season came back to bite that team in the end. It's happened so many times.
Gabe wants Eric DaCosta to open up the checkbook. Let's spend like the Saints and finally get it done. Listen, Gabe, the problem is the Saints are in cap nightmare, what feels like every other year. Yeah. Sod Blitz 34.
He says, I hope Monken leaves. 0 total options of any kind in the first half. 2 for the game. His play calling, especially situational, has left a lot to be desired. I agree with him on the option reads, but we may not have to debate it because Monken may be getting a head coaching job. We'll see. But I do not want him to leave.
With Ben Johnson being hired today by Chicago, that was one of the 3 interview requests that were reported out there for Todd. So one more that's off the board, and another one from Saad, who writes, there was too many times this year it seemed like 3rd and long was his goal. He's too pass happy. We need an RPO style coordinator. And Nico.
Number 1 rushing offense by far this year.
By far.
I love my coach, but real ones remember the same issues in the Flacco era. Insert Pittsburgh, KC, any team singing along to their team anthem while our players get emotional and never show up. Embarrassing.
Let's see. Man. KK, I'm not sure. Is it Carrere?
I think KK's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, brother. Let me know in the live chat. I'll take care of you and not botch it again like I did to Shanae last night. Heartbreak now and not in the Super Bowl. Would feel 1,000 times worse if this happened in the Super Bowl. We had such a fun and amazing season. Go Ravens. Appreciate you, Kay. Sky God 64.
Good seeing you yesterday, Bobby. I was wrong with my 21-3 call, but I was 2 out of 3 on touchdown picks. Derrick Henry won, likely won. Better luck next year. #Vaults.
Sky God, where did we meet? And what's your name? Because I can't see you in your profile photo, but I trust that we did meet, and I hope you had an awesome time in Buffalo. Holly writes, thank you both for the great content through the season. Bobby, glad the hot spot held up for the trip. Shout out to my bro, Cameron. Ravens will be back. Thank you, Holly, and thank you, Cameron. Obviously, this trip back, as you guys have seen, if you've been watching the last 51 minutes, has been a little up and down, but we're in the middle of a snowstorm and literally in the middle of absolutely nowhere, Western New York, coming up on the Pennsylvania border. So thanks, Holly.
Pretty Fresh 20. What's funny behind you there?
My seatmate like that.
Oh, Pretty Fresh 20 says,
Sarah, I think we're all kind of like, delirious at this point. So
yes,
that's what's happening here.
yes. I'm right there with you. I'm ready to go to bed already, and it's only 6
And by the way,
yeah.
shout out Arnie over my left shoulder. I mean, can we give him some love? This is
Arnie
Be More Around Town's photographer.
Okay.
I mean, look at him. He's getting a lot of camera time right now.
Wait, is he watching the show? What is he doing back there?
He might be. I don't know.
Well, you'd think he'd look up. Look up if you're watching the show, Arnie. There.
You watching the show? Are you watching the show? You are? He's watching the show. That's my guy right there. He's a good dude. He's a former Orioles staffer and really talented photographer who's helped me out with my new camera that you suggested that I buy earlier in the year. So a lot of fun traveling with him and the rest of the Be More crew.
He's giving you. Maybe I need those tips.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, Pretty Fresh 20 says Jim and John should trade QBs. Jim has coached and took a talent like Lamar in calling Kaepernick to a Super Bowl. Justin Herbert's talent suits John's coaching abilities, as in Flacco. Perfect match made. I kind of don't want, unless you're saying they should trade QBs, I would like to keep Lamar. Please and thank you. I do not want Justin Herbert over Lamar. Please and thank you.
Captain, it was 0 read options or designed runs. That's how we get Lamar in the flow of the game. By the time we got settled, we were down 13. Bob Clemens.
Andrews sneak gains 2 yards every time. Do that till you get in after the Bateman catch. Also in those conditions, passing is much more risky for 2-point tries, hence the drop. Got to try Henry once for sure.
Not a fan, I can tell, is running hot today. I've been seeing him in the live chat. Did Lamar put the team in position to win when it mattered? Yes or no?
Yes.
He pulled them out of the hole. The answer is yes. He pulled them out of the hole he dug. If you're hating on Lamar or Mark today, stop calling yourself a Ravens fan and don't bother watching next year. Not a fan from the
See, and he makes a lot of sense. It's always interesting how fandom kind of pushes each other to extremes. Do you know what I mean? Like when he says if you're hating on Lamar or Mark, I completely agree. Like nothing should get personal, nothing should get angry, nothing. I mean, you can be angry about the outcome, but towards a person. But then because we push each other to such extreme, it gets to the point that those that are defending don't even want you to even say, he should have had that catch or he cost the Ravens or Lamar shouldn't have fumbled or whatever. And it gets to the point where it's you can have no middle ground. You know what I mean? It's just of course Lamar and Mark put their team in a hole. Of course they did. And that's not hating, but some people take it so extreme that it is hating. And then it becomes the middle ground. Can't even be had anymore. It's kind of crazy.
Not a fan. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Sky God 64 follows up with what I asked, clarifying earlier on there. We met at the Be More Around Town tailgate yesterday. Right as your feed went out, you switched to your phone. I'm your size, had the Salute to Service Lamar jersey, which was sweet, around the 50-minute mark on your pregame live video. Yeah, I do remember that. And Sarah, you'd appreciate this. Had to get a little creative yesterday when my feed went down because the generator was unplugged or down momentarily. There were thousands of people out in this environment in Orchard Park. And all of a sudden, I'm an audio-only show, meaning the camera goes out because it's attached to the generator power-wise. So what do I do, right? You and I often think on the fly. I'm like, okay, I'll send the guest link to my cell phone and start hosting this dang thing from my cell phone. And that's exactly what I did. Boom. And I started racing through the tailgate, going all throughout the streets of Buffalo, trying to just give everybody watching from home a sense of what was taking place, which I thought was a really unique experience, to be honest with you. I know there were a few rotten eggs in the weeks with leading up to this game with MVP conversations and some bad blood, but I think every fan base has those people. And what I found was it was a hospitable group of Western New Yorkers who opened up and welcomed us in. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the two fan bases. I think there's a really unique pregame tailgate experience with how residential it is around Highmark Stadium, and it made for a very cozy neighborhood type of environment. So I encourage everybody to make the trip next year if you are inclined, because it was a fun one.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. And that's usually how it is when like people in person are much more friendly and kind in person than they are behind a keyboard. And so always have to remember that. So moving on to the Mark Andrews kind of discussion. First of all, going back to the fumble, Garrett, what's Garrett's last name on there? I should have grabbed it. It got cut off there.
Garrett Sprints, I believe, is his handle.
Sprints. Okay. At Garrett Sprints. He kind of summarized Mark Andrews' 8 playoff games where he's averaged 39.4 yards per game, no touchdowns, 1 fumble, and 8 drops. Bleh. Game-losing drop versus Buffalo. He says, I'm not sure how we're supposed to just accept this type of play. Don't know where you go from here. And then on the right, we've got a screen grab from Warren Sharp where he says he has a screen grab of right after Mark Andrews cut that first down pass in the middle of the field. And he says, you'll never guess which way he ran after this. And he has an arrow pointing towards the end zone, which is north and south, obviously. And Mark starts running east and west. And so we've obviously know about the drop in the end zone. But Bobby, Garrett pointing out kind of his overall playoff games. And I guess this is what I was trying to allude to yesterday, because Mark Andrews has been so reliable. He has been deemed the security blanket of Lamar. But when it comes to these big moments where Lamar needs his teammate to come up, including in the playoffs, 8 drops in the playoffs, according to Garrett here. Obviously the fumble. But he asked the questions like, where do you go from here?
I don't know. It's totally inexplicable. This is a player who this year alone, not only after a slow statistical start, ended up with a career best single season touchdown catches with 11, but also, as we know, hit the historic mark, right? Who'd he pass? It was Todd Heap. He passed Todd Heap for the most touchdown receptions in franchise history. So, and he just finished up his 7th NFL season. To say this is inexplicable, I don't even know what to say. And I saw some that were saying, why do you go to him on that 2-point conversion with the game on the line if you know that they're not thinking like that? They're thinking matchups. They're thinking X's and O's. That Todd Monken's thinking, what is the best possible scenario that'll allow us to tie this game, get a stop, because people forget that there was 93 seconds left on the clock with 2 timeouts for Buffalo had they converted. But they're not thinking what Mark's past failures or past resume looks like when it comes to the postseason. So where do they go from here? I don't know. He's still under contract through 2025.
Yeah, let me just give the numbers for you real quick. So
please.
he's his final year of his contract is this upcoming season. He would be a $16.9 million cap hit. I'm not encouraging that him being cut, but I know the next question is like, what would the dead cap be if you did cut him? It would be just about $6 million. So you would free up around between 10 and 11 million if you did cut him and live with that 6 million dead money. And by the way, you have the same dead money whether you trade or cut him.
Here's my thing. The Ravens have built up a tight end room, and you and I are going to get, as we've already teased multiple times, we'll get into the nuance of these conversations in the coming days regarding guys' futures.
Yeah.
But being that he's got 1 year under his contract and they have spent considerable draft capital on building up arguably, maybe inarguably, the deepest tight end room in the entire league, you've still got Likely and Kohler under rookie contracts. Like, keep Mark. Don't cut him. This is a prolific player for you. This is one of your all-time greats that's ever come through the organization. He's done everything right. I get these numbers right here are not something to write home about. He'll be the first to tell you that. But you got two tight ends that could very well be your next dynamic duo, the way that Andrews and Likely are for the foreseeable future, once Andrews perhaps walks in free agency this time next year.
Mm-hmm. I will say this.
Run it
I
back
don't
with
think
that trio.
I was going to say, he's not going to get, and I could be wrong. I doubt he's going to be given the Evans / Cundiff treatment. You know what I mean? Where those guys kind of came in, weren't drafted by him, doesn't have the relationship with your quarterback that Lamar has in him. Lamar sang his praises all season. He got after the media and fans who said to trade him last offseason. Remember, Lamar kind of went off. I was like, I can't believe people were saying that. Like, he's Mandrews. He's my guy, all that kind of stuff. So I think based off his history with Lamar and with this team, I don't think he's going to get that Evans treatment. Now, you could, maybe. I don't know if he would do this, but because it's not quite the same. But remember, everybody was calling for Ronnie Stanley to be cut this time last year. And what Eric DeCosta did was go to Stanley and say, take a pay cut. Now, in that case, though, Ronnie Stanley had years of little activity because of injury. And so he probably didn't have the confidence that if he hit the market, that he wouldn't be able to make as much money as what the Ravens were willing to give him after the pay cut. So that kind of situation was a little bit different. I think EDC had more leverage. And despite this game here yesterday, I think that if the Ravens were to let go of Mark, I think he would have more leverage in that situation. So my prediction is that he will still be a part of the Ravens next year. Under
I
his
think so
current
as
contract.
well.
Yeah.
Yep, I think so as well. And you can reevaluate this time next year. You hope that he redeems himself in the postseason. But to just write this guy off, not to discount what Garrett put together, those are numbers that really are a black eye in what has otherwise been, a historic player for your franchise over the last 7 years. But as I tweeted, there's also the human element in this as well. And I woke up this morning in reflective mode. You know me, I love a good moment for reflection. And when the season comes to an end, I start thinking about various things. And wow, think about how much Mark has battled through over the last year plus. People forget that there's multiple reports out there, and Mark even speaking about it himself, that car accident that he was in August, had he not worn his seatbelt, he wouldn't even have wanted to know where that could have gone. And so that was serious. And I think that impacted him on a number of ways, like both physically, mentally, and you don't know the impact, but it clearly had an impact on him. And, prior to that, we all remember last year rushing back from that serious ankle injury. I think it was a cracked fibula and some ligament damage as well to be available for the AFC Championship game. And then, of course, coming off this year, as you referenced too, with an offseason of just ridiculous trade talk and a slow statistical start to his career, he still finishes with a career best 11 touchdowns, as I mentioned a minute ago. I think he's universally respected inside that building and in this city. And I think while this is a really tough pill to swallow, and obviously we are all holding him accountable, to just write him off and throw him to the street, I think would be absolutely ludicrous and hyperbolic.
Yeah, and you're not like excusing yesterday's play.
Not at all.
You're just showing the human side of it. And speaking to that human side of it, I don't know why I've done this to myself. Maybe it's just because it really doesn't bother me. I've said this a million times. I like to look ugly in the eye. I've rewatched that drop in the end zone probably a good 30 times just on a loop, right? Like on one of those TikTok loops. And I've noticed, you should go and do this. Warren Sharp, Bobby, has the close-up version from the end zone on his Twitter. And so you get a good look at Mark Andrews' facial expression, because when he dropped it, he gets right up and runs over to the end zone like it's nothing, right? He just tries to keep it business as usual, doesn't hang his head, just gets up, and you're like, dang, did that even affect him? Literally before he hits the ground and he feels the ball slipping away, you can see like the disappointment and like sadness on his face. Like it's like, you got to go watch it. And that is like the human side of it. And so,
and CBS too, Sarah, caught him on the sideline in the moments afterwards, and he was sitting there with a helmet off, pacing back and forth. He couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
And you know that one of his strengths is being so unflappable.
Right.
And to your point, it was impressive to just see him get up and run off and not show any visible frustration. But we know internally his heart was shattered.
Yeah.
And probably is right now, which is one of the many reasons that he did not make himself available last night and was not immediately available and was not seen, let's say, by Brian Wacker and other beat reporters who were on the scene for today's locker room cleanout. Do you have a thought on this? Or are you indifferent on it? Where are you?
No, I want to be consistent. I prefer it when players show up after they've had a bad game. I like it when I prefer it that they face the music right away. Now, we keep talking to the human side, right, of it. So, and this is what Eric DaCosta has to do. Like Eric DaCosta can look at the car accident. He can look at the injury. He can look at what he's overcome. He can look at like who he is as a man and how he drafted him and all that. But none of that can factor into the question that was posed to us by the super chat, right? Which is, where do you go from here? Or excuse me, what Garrett said, which is, where do you go from here? And so he has to separate off that human side and solely base his decision on, do I think Mark Andrews can rebound, have a good season with Lamar Jackson, if not a great season, and rebound in the playoffs the next time we're in that position? So he has to make that decision. Is he worth $16 million? Right? That's the decision. And really what he has to ask is he worth $10 million? Because if you get rid of him, it's $6 million dead cap. Is the $10 million difference, is he worth it? Is what he has to ask himself, and put the human side kind of to the side as he makes that business decision. But he doesn't put it aside in the way he treats him, right? In the way that he treats him as a human, as a player. So we're talking about this human side, and I understand why Mark may not want to talk, or maybe PR just didn't let him talk. Who knows, right? It could be one or the other. But in my view, if you have a good game, you come and talk to the media. If you have a bad game, you come and talk to the media. You have a game like Mark Andrews did. I have been consistent on that I think you need to show up, win or lose, or whether you play well or don't play well.
Make that two of us.
Okay. Yeah. And I thought Mark would, to be honest with you. I thought he would.
And I said a few minutes ago, this is very uncharacteristic of him, which is probably why you thought that. Yeah. And I would have thought it as well. If he didn't make himself available last night, I think we both would have expected to see him earlier today. But that's not the case, and we'll see. And now the offseason begins, and so you just don't know when players will make themselves available. I know we have a direct line to Mark, and in due time, I will reach out, and I'm sure it's unlikely that he'll make this his first destination to speak about it, but we'll stick our necks out there and see what happens.
Well, in the meantime, Brian Wacker, did you already express what Pat Ricard said?
I did not.
Okay, I didn't know if you were down that far. So Pat Ricard, according to Brian, who was in the exit meetings with him today, said Andrews will be hurting for a while after his drop and fumble. And my guess is he'll go back to Arizona, be with his family, and take the time that he's going to need to get over this. I mean, if KVN couldn't get out of his bed for, 2 weeks? Or at least it was between the AFC Championship loss and then when he finally got up to go to the Super Bowl where we saw him, and he didn't have the magnitude of the loss on his shoulders the way Mark does right now. I do wish him well. I do wish him well, and I hope he bounces back soon, regardless of what happens in the future.
Dudes, as as good of a dude as you will find. I
He's
know
a
there's
good
folks
guy.
in the chat that are upset that we're mentioning the human element of it. Well, guess
But
what?
I
Deal with
don't-
it. Deal with
Yeah.
it. Because
Who cares that he was in a car accident? Like, okay, tough guy. Who cares that
You
he
know
was
what
in
I
a
mean?
car
Like, just
accident
try
that
to look
almost
at the
took
big
his
picture.
life? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know, it's just like, come on, guys, have a little bit of empathy. I know
Yeah,
it's an emotional day, it's an emotional roller coaster, but all we're asking for is a little empathy here.
No, I'm not asking for it. They can be whoever they are. I don't care. But I don't. You know, I'm not there with it.
All I'm asking for is a little empathy.
Because I'll also say this: I don't know that Mark Andrews would even ask for it. Mark Andrews is just he's going to be fine. I feel like he's going to be fine. He's going to bounce back. He's a tough.
What else you
dude.
got from locker room clean out?
Let me tell you what else I got from locker room clean out. Let's see here. Zay Flowers spoke. Lots of media members talked about this, but Jamison Hensley got a little video from Zay talking about how it just killed him to not be out there to help out his guys. Which, Bobby, during that when they were blitzing and in man coverage, the Ravens missed Zay. And Lamar still moved that ball in that second half despite it, but they could use them. They could use them big time in this. But here's Zay on having to miss that game.
No, it was killing me for sure. Like, I want to be out there every game. I want to go through everything they go through. So, not being out there, it took a little toll on me just to watch that and not be able to participate and do what I wanted to do and help the team.
Did you feel like you were going to have a good chance in Kansas City if you guys advanced?
Yeah, I feel like I was going to have a better chance to play.
You feel like
We'll never know. We'll never know. But clearly that workout, Sarah, maybe suggested that was the case. The Ravens productions team put out, what was it, on Friday? I think that workout went out, and Zay was off to the side of practice and non-padded, but doing some ladder work, some agility work, some lateral quickness work. And while that knee brace was significant on the right-hand leg, he did look like he was moving relatively freely, but clearly their medical staff didn't think that he was close enough to give it a go.
Quick hits.
Let's do it.
So we remember when the Ravens beat the Steelers in the wild card round. Afterwards, Roquan Smith made a mention that Patrick Queen may be wearing a T-shirt to get going to Cabo or somewhere like that. Well, Patrick Queen heard that because when the Ravens lost last night in the divisional round, Patrick Queen tweets, "Aw, yeah, Ro, I saved the jet for you."
Hey, you know what? If we're gonna have fun with Roe like we did last weekend, you got to have fun when it comes full circle, right? That's exactly what it did. We know these two are buddies. We know they have immense amount of respect for one another. And PQ had that sucker saved in his draft, Sarah.
He
was
was
ready to
like,
roll.
"You just wait. He's had it saved in his drafts, Bobby." He was
You already
ready.
know. You already know.
I don't mind the back and forth because I feel like with these two, they both know who they are, and I don't know that either one are like bothered by the other.
Yeah, no,
To be
I think
honest, I don't think there's any real beef here.
some good spirited banter.
Yeah. All right, so you got this for us. We keep seeing these comparisons to Peyton Manning. We just heard one earlier in the show from Shannon Sharp talking about Steve Young having a monkey on his back for winning Super Bowls for winning MVPs and not having Super Bowls. And then he finally did twice. And then we've had comparisons to Peyton Manning.
We have, and these will continue. Warren Sharp noting that Lamar has been in the NFL for 7 seasons now. He is 2 games under 500 so far in the postseason, 3-5. Peyton's first 7 years in the NFL, he was also 3-5. Went to the playoffs his 8th year, was 1 and done. Went to the playoffs his 9th year, ripped off 4 wins, and won the Super Bowl as a member of the Indianapolis Colts, one of 2 that he ended up walking away with. Of course, the other being your hometown team, Denver Broncos. So, again, I know some of you despise these comparisons, but it's just to say Lamar's got time, and you can hang your hats on the fact that history shows that if 8 is healthy, Sarah, they are going to be relevant with or without Derrick Henry.
Yes, but I do imagine Derek will be back with the season that he had and another year on his contract. But, well, yeah. I mean, the Peyton stuff just shows that like you just don't ever quit. You don't give up on anybody. Lamar is a special talent. He's bound to get over the hump, right? Right?
Right? It's I know you still have I would think your confidence has not wavered.
No, it is not. But here's what gets me. And again, this comes back to like just having covering the NFL for so long. I mean, I started in 2005. So this summer it'll be 20 years. And so that's why I could say the other day, like, I'm just nervous that what had hurt them all season will come back and bite them. And it did. The second thing that I know is that you're not as like I was listening to commentary after the Detroit Lions lost to the Commanders. And it was on ESPN, one of those shows, and they were like, well, do you factor in at all how injured the Lions were? And the line they kept saying was no, because everybody's beat up. And I was like, nah, the Ravens aren't beat up. Like, it was Zay, and that's a significant injury, but it was the only injury. The Ravens were fresh. The Ravens were healthy. Like, the injury report for most of December was clean. The injury report going into these playoff games was mostly clean. It's not true that everybody was hurt. And that's always the line that people use, that everybody's beat up. And so, yes, I believe in Lamar, but I also remember 2021 and 2022 and him getting injured, or that, I also remember it wasn't just him that injured in 2021. It was like half the starters seemed like they were injured coming out of training camp, And so it's like, how often can you ask? This is what's crazy. Going back to that Get Up video that we listened to where they said the Ravens were the best team in the AFC 2 years in a row. Like, how often can you ask a GM to keep putting together the best roster? It's so clear to me that the Ravens roster was more talented than Buffalo. Absolutely it was. The Ravens were a better team than the Chiefs last year, but the Chiefs knew how to finish. The Chiefs know how to finish. They know how to do it in those do or die moments. And so can you count on being, healthy every year? Can you count on overcoming and winning the division 2 years in a row in a tough division? Who knows what's going to happen if Joe Burrow and the Bengals can bounce back? Any of that kind of stuff. And so I believe in Lamar, but you never know around the circumstances around it. And that's why you feel so disappointed seeing these things get away from him. Now I see two of you, Bobby.
What the heck is going on right now? Oh, man.
Yeah. So anyway,
on?
I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
that's all right. We are 80 minutes in, and sure enough, it starts to drop on us, right? But
well, we should finish up here.
Yeah, we should. And just some closing messages from different members of the team. Tylan Wallace reflecting on his year 4. I know the season didn't end how we wanted it to, but I got a lot of love for this team. Just want to say I appreciate everyone who supported us and helped us get this far. Excited to see what the future holds. All love. #RavensFlocks there. He is a really good dude who made the most of his opportunities, aside from the issues that he had as a punt return specialist at times this year. But Tylan is just an all-around good guy, and I believe he is one of the many unrestricted free agents, is he not?
He is, yes.
So his future obviously uncertain.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't know that he's going to command a lot of money on the open market. So if the Ravens and him wanted to reunite, I feel like that could happen pretty easily.
Yeah, special teamer. Somebody that you get small sample size, small doses of, but always seems to come through.
He always has big
scheme
moments
to
when he
him.
has opportunities, and he did it again last night.
He did in the wild card round as well. And again, aside from aside from a couple muffed punts this year, I thought Tylen, in a small sample size, was a really impactful player for them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, as you made mention to earlier, Todd Monken did interview for that Chicago Bears job, but Adam Schefter reported a little over an hour or two ago that Chicago is finalizing a deal to hire Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as its next head coach. So, as you mentioned earlier, that is one opportunity off the board for Todd Monken.
Yes, and that is one of the 3 that he has reportedly at least been contacted by. The other one he's actually had an interview for, as he did with Chicago. I believe that was Jacksonville. And then the Vegas Raiders submitted a slip, a request slip to interview him. I don't believe that's actually happened. But now, obviously, being that the Ravens season is over, there are no more parameters, restrictions in terms of getting to him. So just something to look out for as the Ravens offseason officially begins. Maybe there'll be lesser staff additions and moves and different things happening. But feels like they're in a decent position right now to retain both of their coordinators for yet another year. Obviously, Jacksonville could start to make a big push for a second interview for Todd, but there hasn't been a whole lot of buzz. And it certainly seems as if Tom Brady's influence in Vegas is going to push them in the direction of a younger, maybe more hot name, not taken away from Todd's candidacy whatsoever. But it just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of buzz around him right now, which obviously is good for the Ravens.
Why don't we finish up with a couple last super chats, and then we'll wind up as it is completely dark on the bus. How many hours are you away? How many hours are you away now from Baltimore?
I look like a total ghost right now, but obviously lighting came secondary. It was more so getting in a position so I could help you out for the show, and you've been driving the whole thing, which I appreciate. But I think we're not getting home till after 9 o'clock. Today's been a tough day, and I'll just say, this was in no way Be More Around Town's fault.
Yeah,
this was something that was completely out of their control.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, it's been a lot of sitting and waiting, and so just been on a bus all day long. We were supposed to leave at 8:30. The goal was to get in and out of there early. We actually shifted the departure time up because of the lake effect. Apparently, there was a storm incoming this morning, and our goal was to beat that.
Yeah.
Luckily, that never came in until later on, and we're doing okay now. I think we're in Pennsylvania. Yeah, we're in Pennsylvania now. But I'll tell you what, once you and I finish up, you know what I'm about to do.
Take a little nap.
I am knocking out.
Yes, me too.
And we need it.
We both need it. I know that we're both exhausted. I probably got to bed at 2:30 last night, and I had to be up at 5 to get out of Atlanta. So yeah, it's I'll be refreshed tomorrow though. I'm going to get a night's rest, get a good workout in the morning, be right back at it tomorrow. So we'll finish up with some of these super chats. Gabe Caesar says Ravening because it's now a yearly trend. FML.
Adit, what's going on, Adit? I think they draft a tight end and move on after 2025. Keep in mind though, Adit, I mean, you'll have, well, I guess maybe they'll want 3 tight ends, but Charlie and Isaiah will still be on their rookie contracts, right? Because they were both 22. Isaiah just finished up year 3. Let's see, 22.
I am looking it up
24.
now.
Yeah, believe they were both class of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. You check that while I get another one up here.
Classic that it's always the second. They frequently double up on tight ends in a single draft, and usually the second drafted tight end becomes the better one or the more productive one. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Isaiah likely is here through 2025.
Oh, so both he and Kohler would be up. Their rookie deals are expiring next year then.
Yeah, next year this time.
Okay, I got you. So maybe they do draft one. Red and get him in the program.
Yeah.
Red Hood says we need to get Tyreek or Higgins to make it so they can't just stop the run. We also need a true superstar pass rusher like Trey. I'm guessing Trey Hendrickson or Max Crosby is who you're referring to there, Red. They did have 2 double-digit sack getters for what it's worth this year, and that was KVN and Adafe. But neither one of them are sort of your overwhelming kind of guy that you need to consistently double.
Do I
Captain
break
Hart.
Red's heart now, or just not about what the Higgins and the Tyreek Hill dream? Do I just let him have it since we just kind of
Wide
coming off
receiver
that
spending.
loss? Do we just let him have the dream?
Yeah.
Okay.
Spare him.
Sorry, Red. I shouldn't have even asked. With this coming off a brutal loss, all should dare to dream. Captain Hard with us again. He says we get #1 seed next year and we go into the Super Bowl.
And JL Green, love the optimism from you, Captain. JL Green says, I love and respect both of you, Bobby and Sarah. No disrespect to Coach Munkin or you, Sarah. I'm just frustrated. And I think that echoes the sentiments of many within Ravens Nation. JL, we hope that you're doing all right and going through the emotions. Just imagine what the players are going through right now. We shared Marlon's tweet. We shared Tylan Wallace. Mark Andrews hasn't even spoken to the media. So clearly this is something that everybody is affected by. Want to show some love to our patrons as well. Darian Covington and 100 Crystal Clear. Thank you both for believing in what we're building. You guys are valued members of the Vault Patreon community. You've been so for a while now, and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you both. And if you guys are interested in doing the same this off season, you can visit patreon.com/Ravens Vault podcast to learn more. Hard to believe. First time I said this off season. Yes.
Captain Hard coming in.
That is where we are.
Coming in again. We should have the same team next year. I know Stanley and Ricard is a must sign. Every other free agent isn't a must. Well, either tomorrow or later this week. I was looking at the unrestricted free agent list. He's right. McCary might be another one you kind of put in that list. Those would maybe be the 3. But yes, you like every other, there's like a list of something like around 15. It's not one of those ones where you're like, oh, that Ravens absolutely cannot lose this person. You know what I mean? There's nobody there. Yeah. Like there was Matabike. Yep. There was obviously Lamar before that.
Justice Hill.
I mean, even Justice is like not one that was like a must have. But Brandon Stevens, I don't think they're going to be bringing him back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more questions like Ricard. I could totally see him coming back.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. He said that.
Who
He
else
said
uses
as much.
a fullback who else uses fullbacks like him? He'd want to come back with Lamar and Derrick Henry. The fullbacks are just not used as much as they used to be. So I could see him coming back. Stanley, that was probably the one I'm most curious about. And then McCary. Does McCary come back? So it's really yeah, I mean, the Ravens, really can run it back. I mean, most of the key players are already locked in.
Yeah.
And so it becomes like get a couple of, you really build through the draft and get a couple of free agents here and there, but I'm telling you, they are not going to make big splashes. I just don't see it.
No. And I'm fully expecting them to run it back as well for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
All right. Wait, so am I supposed to close it down?
Everybody
I'm so used to you doing it.
Say it again, sir.
I said, do you want to close it down or did you want me to? Because I know that you've been having me drive this today.
Yeah, I'll let you do it. I just wanted to say quickly that, and this is sort of in my exhaustive state here, that what a tremendous season it was. I think I have a lot of gratitude for everyone that came aboard. I think we have a lot of new subscribers after this year that make us a daily watch of theirs, and to meet them in person, I think hits different. What an awesome experience it was to be out on the road, kind of feel that energy.
Yeah.
I think Ravens Nation traveled extremely well. And as you and I always talk about, this partnership remains as strong as ever going into the off season. This will be our 22, 23, 24, This will be our third season together, I believe, our third football season coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, I just lied. This will be our fourth football season together coming up in 2025, I believe.
That can't be right.
2022, 23, and 24. I think that's how it went, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
And so with that in mind, I think we both
That's
entered the
crazy.
offseason. That's insane. And to see the way that we've evolved, the fact that we haven't even been live yet on a daily basis for a year. Free agency in March will mark that moment of a year. So I know that while I don't come across as it right now because of being sleep deprived, I am very energized going into the off season. I have a lot on my plate that I want to get done that I know you and I are aligned on. And I'm looking forward to providing coverage for the show from New Orleans at Radio Row and tracking down as many different interviews as we can. There's a chance that I'll be in Indianapolis for the Combine. And so it's just a long way of saying, as I'm sure we'll do in the coming days, thank you for all the support that you guys have given us this regular season. It was really a joy. It's a blur, but it's a joy, and as is working with you. And I think this weekend embodied what it is that we built. You were playing mom first and foremost. I was doing something unique for a change of scenery, and yet we didn't skip a beat aside from missing our 12 noon call time today. And so just feel very grateful going into the off season, and appreciate you more than ever, and cannot wait to attack the next few months leading up to the draft with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Draft, free agency, combine, all of it. All of it. We're going to have it all on lockdown. And I'll just say this, because I mean, gratitude is always like a great thing when things are down. I'm also grateful for you. And I had fun this season. And I said this last night, we're going to be in the exact same boat next year. And so you just got to choose right now. If you're not going to enjoy life until the Ravens get over this playoff hump, right, which is to get to the Super Bowl and ultimately, hopefully, and we just got another super chat, win it. Can you, you're going to have to choose now. Is it not going to be fun ever until they overcome that hump, or are you going to enjoy the journey? And everybody's got to do their own thing. I'm going to enjoy the journey. I had friends texting me today, hey, are you okay? I'm like, yes, of course. This is not like do or die. You know what I mean? It just, yeah. I said this last night. Football, I will never allow football to bring me misery or sadness, but I will invite it when it can bring me joy and happiness and excitement. You know what I mean? And that's what you have to do with sports, because the vast majority of the time, you aren't going to win it all, whether it's like college sports, basketball, football, whatever it is. Your team is going to lose the big one more often than they win the big one, because that's how it's designed. Unless you had Tom Brady as your quarterback and right now Patrick Mahomes. Unless you have one of those two things, you are mostly ending in loss. So to me, I have fun on the show because I enjoy football. I have fun on the show because I enjoy watching the Ravens, and I enjoy like the puzzle of putting together rosters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm actually quite happy. We've got almost 4,200 concurrents with us right now, the day after a terrible loss at a time that we aren't usually here. We're usually here at noon. And so I'm glad to see that not too many people are falling out. You know what I mean? I'm glad people are sticking around, and I hope that you guys enjoy this journey of trying to get back to this again next year, and enjoy the highs as much as possible and get over the lows as quickly as possible.
It's well said. And I think the way the NFL calendar is made, what better opportunity, right? You guys got an opportunity to just hop on with us right now, and stick with us and follow what the offseason consists of, including free agency, draft coverage, schedule release coverage, OTAs, mini camp, so on and so forth. So yeah. Joy Walker says, can you imagine a football season without Lamar or the Ravens? I remember the mid-90s. I'm thankful for today, regardless of the outcome, but still believe in our Super Bowl chances. Keep your heads up. Concurrence.
And
Asmodeus. Thanks, Joy.
He said, I respect enjoying the journey, but my faith in any Super Bowl potential is down the toilet. Yeesh.
Richard is
Osmodius.
coping.
I was going to say Osmodius. So you feel like Lamar's not going to get a Super Bowl?
He's in the middle of his grieving process.
Yeah, he's in the dark right now.
Nothing he says or does shall be held against him right now. Appreciate you, Richard. And appreciate all you guys for being patient with us today as we work through different logistics and as I close in on Baltimore. Not really, because we're far out. But partner, get some rest. Congratulations to my man, Aiden, for a tremendous weekend. And we will catch up with you guys tomorrow for a noon Ravens lunch hour live stream. That's right. We're back to our regularly scheduled programming, barring something unforeseen. I feel like I need to throw that out there based on today. And I will let you close things out.
All right. Well, there's not much else to say. We will see you tomorrow at noon inside the vault. See you then.